be fucking ashamed of yourself. You're fucking scum. You're fucking pigs! Patriarchy. Fucking rape apologist, incest supporting, woman hating, fucking scum. You woman hater! Patriarchy, fuckface.
You and your son and your everybody and your friends, bunch of fucking men.
Fucking scum.
This is what men's rights look like. This is what men's rights look like. This is what men's rights look like.
Feminist theory is not the Bible. It is not the Declaration of Independence. It is not the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
You're damn right we target feminist ideology. Feminist ideology teaches nothing but hate and contempt for men and boys.
Feminism must be like the psychedelic drug. I swear to God, because nothing they say is remotely close to reality.
We're going to continue to call feminists out on their hate and bigotry, and we really don't give a damn if they like it or not.
Well, you know what, feminism, if you don't like the rule of law, then don't be part of society. Go somewhere else.
Blue Collar Red Pill, with your host, the One Dan Army Dan Aarons, and Jack Nightrunner Barnes.
Good evening and welcome back to Blue Collar Red Pill Radio Show there, folks. It's time for another grilling week of feminist theory. Tonight we got Jack Barnes is here with us, as usual. Jack, you there, buddy?
I'm here.
Okay, brother.
Living large and loving it.
Right on. Made it back just in time. We were a little worried there for you. As usual, the net gods weren't were smashing you with that patriarchy. And tonight we have a special inserted guest. It's Chris Carter. He's a kick-ass activist from Southern Ontario, and he deals a lot with freedom of information, and he knows how to make the government jump sometimes. And he makes them a little squirm a little bit now and then. So we're gonna bring Chris on right now. Chris, you there with us?
I sure am.
Okay, Chris. How about you give us a little bit of background, please?
Well, thanks a lot for allowing me to be on the program today, guys, first off. I'm a male, obviously, who went through the family courts here in Ontario, both the family courts and the so-called child protection litigation courts, which here in Ontario are done by a private corporation called the Children's Aid Societies. And perhaps like some of the listeners, I took, excuse my French, but I took an absolute shit-kicking at the hands of that system. It was, I'm not going to get into all the details of what happened, but I really, really took a shit-kicking, been charged, arrested, prosecuted, incarcerated numerous times since then without doing anything criminal, mostly because of the political work that I've done in regards to trying to strike back at the Children's Aid Societies and the courts and judges of the province of Ontario, Canada. I think I'm up to about, over 20 charges at this point now. Needless to say, most of the charges are eventually dropped, but I have been prosecuted on numerous occasions. I'm actually in trial right now. I can't even talk about the trial. The trial began back in February 2012. I was assisting a local family who was being harassed and pursued by the Children's Aid Society in this town, in this city where I'm currently living. Ontario has 46 different Children's Aid Societies, and I was assisting them. We were able, thank you, dear God in heaven above, we were able to stop their children from being apprehended. The family is still together today, healthy and happy, mom, dad, and 3 beautiful little kids. And the Children's Aid Society doesn't go anywhere near them anymore. But I did incur a couple charges out of that, and I've been in trial since then. But there is a blanket publication ban on the case, so I'm not able to talk about that. But anyways, I took this beating at the hands of the, I'll call it what I've termed it the child protection litigation fraud. And I realized it began in the summer of 2006. For a significant period of the time, I was absolutely overwhelmed and debilitated by emotionalism. I was separated from my children, and it was an incredibly difficult time emotionally and psychologically for me. I wasn't able to fight back, as I imagine most parents who are forced out of their children's lives, made non-custodial parents. I wasn't able to fight back as well as I could have, primarily because of the emotionalism, but also because of how wickedly convoluted and complicated the adversarial litigation system is. I believe that America also uses that style of litigation, which originally comes from England, but they call it the adversarial system. But anyways, in about 2009 or so, I started to, the emotionalism started to subside to a point where I was able to begin to kind of, on a more technical level, examine what in the hell had just happened to my loved ones and I, and begin to examine it and try to dissect it so that we could understand it and ultimately, seek justice for what was done. And very fortunately, I stumbled across an organization called Canada Court Watch, which is out of Ontario, Canada here. It's been around since 1994. It's always had the same leader, a man by the name of Vern Beck. Very, very honorable man, great sense of justice. And one of your members, one of the Voice for Men members, Attila Windsor, who is also a good buddy of mine, he's deeply involved with Court Watch.
Yeah, I was going to say that also Vern Beck was at Attila Windzor's Domestic Violence Symposium back in, I believe it was early June of this year. Was it not?
He sure was. He does really great presentations. And so I was able to hook up with Canada Court Watch. I also hooked up with another gentleman by the name of John Dunn, who actually grew up here in foster care in Ontario. In Canada, for the American listeners, in Canada, when a child's family rights are terminated, they become what's called a Crown Ward. And so John grew up as a Crown Ward, and he had a group called the Foster Care Council of Canada. And to be honest, I learned a heck of a lot in terms of how to examine the government of Ontario, the province of Ontario's laws and legislation and regulations, policies and procedures, all of that kind of stuff. I learned a heck of a lot from John. And I also hooked up with another gentleman by the name of Robert McQuaid, who has his own website called fixcas.com. And for anybody interested in child protection issues, especially in Ontario, but also Canada, America, and England, Robert does an absolutely amazing job of disseminating information in regards to those issues. And so we started, I guess what I started with initially was just a lot of reading. And in 2010, I was able to get to a point where I could actually sit down and read books, family law books, which I got from the public libraries here in Ontario. And I could sit down and spend a few hours per day reading those books and trying to understand, how in the hell these really disgustingly insidious children's aid societies and their bought and paid for business partners, the judges and courts of Ontario, are able to get away with so much wickedly malicious litigation. And so I started reading, and that led me into beginning to communicate with the Government of Ontario via email. And for the first period of time, the Government of Ontario would actually provide responses. When I would write emails and say, well, how come this is allowed to happen? Or why don't you handle this situation in this way? And they would actually provide responses. But as my questions became more on point or incisive, as my knowledge began to increase, the Government of Ontario stopped responding to me. And that forced me to get into freedom of information requesting. And that's what I do a lot of right now. I started doing it really heavily in the spring of 2012. And a lot of my freedom of information work, the documents that I obtain from the Government of Ontario, are posted to the fixcas.com website and also to our Canada Court Watch Facebook page in the files section, if anybody wants to take a look at it. But so I started with that, doing the freedom of information work, and I noticed that the quality of documents that we were getting through freedom of information was exponentially higher than what I was able to read from the public libraries. And what I mean is that it was providing much deeper, much more comprehensive explanations in regards to why the province of Ontario's children's aid societies are able to get away with so much full-on criminality is what they get away with. Probably the most important document that I've obtained so far, if people want to take a look at it, they can Google fixcas.com, Protecting Vulnerable Children. So back in 1995 to 2002, Ontario had a very, very aggressive premier. His name was Mike Harris. He led the Progressive Conservative Party. He had, let's be frank, he had a full-on hatred for people who were not socioeconomically successful. So if you were in the working classes or the poor classes, as far as Mike Harris was concerned, you were dirt. And one of the things that Mike Harris did was, very insidiously, he worked to increase the number of Crown wards, to basically destroy families who, even if they were a married mother and father with children, but were not, financially successful enough to be able to afford a good lawyer. And Mike Harris just targeted those people, and he decided to put in place legislation, which is still in place today, but would be so brutally unfair that families wouldn't stand a chance. And it all started in 1998 when they established this so-called expert panel on child protection. And this is one of the big things that I learned about through freedom of information. Mike Harris's government specifically the Ministry of Community and Social Services, put together this 8-member expert panel on child protection. It included 2 judges, an elementary school principal. Who else was there? Basically, a university professor of social work. 7 of the 8 members derived a significant percentage of their income from child protection litigation, and so obviously had a vested interest in seeing an increase in child protection litigation. The leader of the expert panel she's still a judge today. Her name's Mary Jane Hatton. I believe she was born and raised in Sarnia, Ontario, which is not far from where I am. And at the time she was appointed to the bench, perhaps back in the early 1990s, I believe, she was actually a lawyer for the Children's Aid Society at that time. And she was made the head of this expert panel on child protection. Now, that expert panel, they did their work in 1997 and 1998. And in March 1998, they presented to the Government of Ontario a 77-page report called Protecting Vulnerable Children. That report was not disseminated publicly, basically on anything that could be considered any type of a scale, until we obtained it through Freedom of Information, and it's posted to fixcas.com now. But that report led into 1999. The Mike Harris government created something called Bill 6, the Child and Family Services Amendment Act, and it was that piece of legislation which completely and totally changed the child protection landscape, litigation landscape here in Ontario, and severely empowered the Children's Aid Societies. In my research, I've come to the conclusion that somehow, some way, to the Government of Ontario, the infliction of trauma is somehow profitable to them. It somehow works to their benefit, whether it be financial or ideological. I know that one of the primary purposes of the child protection system in Ontario today is to basically obtain children, just the tiniest percentage of children obtained by the province of Ontario, made Crown wards through child protection litigation. Just the tiniest percentage of those children are adopted into families. Most of them grow up in foster care. A lot of times, really, it's foster care hell. And these children, they are clothed, they are housed, they are fed, they have their dental needs taken care of, they have their medical needs taken care of. Many times they are very, very much over-medicated, but they are not loved. And they grow up without knowing or feeling the love of their grandparents, their uncles and aunts, their cousins. Many times they're separated from their brothers and sisters. And it is a disgustingly insidious attack on these children by the Children's Aid Societies and the courts of Ontario. And what they do is they ship these children, repeatedly move them from foster home to foster home, constantly traumatizing the children in the process. And then by the time the kids are 12 or 13 years old, they haven't been adopted. They can't find foster homes for them anymore, so they get put into these group homes. And then, especially in terms of the boys, you have to understand that not all of these kids, but a percentage of them, are emotionally and psychologically discombobulated, and traumatized. And the most natural thing in the world for them to do is to express frustration or to lash out from time to time. And wham, right then and there, the criminal charges start rolling in. And as disgusting as this sounds, they've set this system up basically so that the judges, the courts, the police, the jails, and the children's aid societies are provided with this never-ending well of human commodities who feed right into their criminal justice system. And here these children are, 13 years old, especially the boys are the ones. What we know is that about 60% of the Crown wards here in Ontario get charges put on them each and every year. There was a pretty significant report done by the provincial advocate in this province, and I'd ask the listeners to look it up if they had time. It's called We Are Your Sons and Daughters from 2007. I forget how long it is. It's over 100 pages. And but the provincial advocate examined the issue of Crown wards being funneled into the criminal justice system. And I remember one of the statistics they talked about, one group home here in Ontario had the police attend at the group home over 300 times in 1 year.
Okay.
Can you imagine? But I mean, that's the way they've completely and totally set this system up. I know that here in Canada now, and I imagine it's very similar in the United States, if you go to any federal or provincial jail, either male or female, I believe the statistic is also around 60 or 70% of the inmates will have spent a significant period of time in foster care. And
Chris, I hate to cut you short, man. Your wealth of information about what's going on in the Ontario courts and what's happening to families and men being separated from their children. Usually when the CAS steps in, there's been a domestic violence complaint by the woman against the man. But we have to get rolling here because it's break time. I just want to give out a quick shout out to Kelvin Mann, Million Man March tomorrow, going on across the world. And what that is that's fathers taking their children to their first day of school. Folks, get on that one. Spread it around if you can. Chris, we'll have you back again. Please, if you could, we'll get you back again. We know there's things coming down the pipeline in the future. Chris, thanks ever so much for getting on here and making some time for us this week. Good luck in your endeavors. I will talk to you. We'll keep in touch, right?
Thank you, Dan.
You're more than welcome. Thanks again. Jack?
Take care, buddy.
You too. Bye-bye. Jack, you there, buddy?
Hey, Dan, are you there?
I'm here, Jack. You made her back, did you?
Yeah. Man, that guy is a well of information. We've got to get him on for the full hour sometime.
We'll have to try again. I'm sure that he'll have things going on in the future.
All right. Well, let's delve right into this subject, or dive in, however you want to put it. All right, Jenny Kutner, Kutner, or Kutner, whichever way. I think Kutner fits this person best. But anyway, she believes that young men don't think they need consent for anal sex. Only young men. She wrote an article over on Salon, and I'm going to drop that link into the chat room now. But yeah, she wrote this article over on Salon. It's just wow. Anyway, yeah. She starts off, yes is the only thing that explicitly means yes. Well, okay. We have other words for yes, like yeah and sure, but yes is the only thing that means yes in sexual situations. The absence of no does not imply the presence of a yes. Well, no, Jenny, that's not entirely true. When two people are making out, and the guy puts his hand on the girl's boob, and she doesn't push it away, but she doesn't break the kiss to say yes, you may do that. Of course, see, we have to explain how to have sex to feminists because they really don't understand it. They don't get it. But anyway, these are some of the most basic guidelines to engaging in consensual sex, regardless of what kind of sex that might be, including anal sex. Note, they are not the only guidelines. Well, yeah, there are certain guidelines into gaining consent, obviously, but feminists, they're trying to put so many guidelines and trying to get the government to legislate how people have sex. They remind me a lot of the Westboro Baptist Church. Anyway, seriously, I mean, they have so many hang-ups about sex. It's not. They're like the Westboro Baptist Church. I'm not. Yeah. Go ahead, Dan. What do you think about that?
Those feminists, they're always at your cervix, ready to be your guide.
Yeah, really. New findings on teen sexual behavior, however, indicate the clear pronouncement of what constitutes consensual anal sex are very, very much needed. In other words, translate, people are having consensual sex in a way that we don't like, so we got to go in there and fix that. Yeah. According to researchers from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, young men are not always concerned with getting consent to perform anal sex with female partners, normalizing the idea that coercion and pain are normal parts of a young woman's sex life. Well, hold on, first thing right here. When she says that young men are not always concerned with getting consent, I'm thinking that she means young men are not always concerned in getting the feminist definition of consent, which is totally different than what a normal person, sane, rational person's definition of consent. So, yeah, probably not. And as far as pain and anal sex goes, look, let's be blunt here and let's be adults. When you're having anal sex, it might be a little bit painful for the first minute or so, and then it gets enjoyable. Okay? That's just the way that works. Coercion and pain are normal part. Well, coercion, we'll talk about that in a minute. But pain, to start with, is a normal part of anal sex. Now, some people, after a while of having anal sex, or, several different or multiple experiences, they grow more accustomed to it. There's less pain. The pain doesn't last as long, and so on and so forth. Until you get to the point where, when you fart, it sounds like the wind howling, then you don't feel any pain during anal sex. Anyway.
Sex positive feminists, anyone? I just want to know, like, tropical medicine. Like, what the heck does tropical medicine have to do with this?
A witch doctor, maybe?
I don't know.
From one of those
I get the
tropical
hygiene
tribes.
part. I get the hygiene part, but tropical medicine, I'm just kind of a little lost how they toss that one into the mix. But okay.
Yeah. Researchers Cicely Marston and Ruth Lewis, whose findings were published in the journal BMJ Open, interviewed 130. Now, when they're doing a study, you expect to see, hey, we researched 1,000 or 2,000, to be a considered a legitimate sample of the population. No, they only
hold on. I want to know what I want to know what BMJ is. Is that the brown mamma jamma?
Oh, are you talking about the brown starfish, Danny?
Well, it says in the journal of BMJ, brown mamma jamma.
Yeah,
Anyways,
130 teens, 130. That's it. Ages 16 to 18, about their attitudes and expectations for anal intercourse between the opposite sex partners. Now, see, notice there, they've already limited it down. There's lesbians out there that like anal sex, but they didn't care about asking them. And there's gay men out there who like anal sex, but they didn't care about asking them. And we'll get to why in just a moment.
You know what? They did 130 kids, and really they are pretty much kids. And I'm going to guess, I'm going to take a stab in the dark, that even normal virginal sex might be painful.
Absolutely.
For both individuals. There's probably a little fumbling going on in the dark. Paradise by the Dashboard Light, for those of us old enough to remember Meatloaf.
Oh, that's a great song.
A little bit of hesitation, a little bit of wrong positioning and stuff like that, awkwardness. They are teenagers after all. I have to wonder what other sex acts, how about oral sex? How about, braces on we used to call it the Black & Decker Pecker Wrecker back in the day when a woman had braces on, and those braces...
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and that kind of got, chewing up the old, what little foreskin those of us our age had back in the day. Things like that. You know what? At that age, kids are, as far as I'm concerned, they know far too much, and they don't have their parents around enough teaching them, instructing them properly, and having open talks with them properly. They're letting the state kind of... they're letting the states raise their kids on things that I kind of figure that the state should be kind of moot on. They shouldn't, just the strict basics. You do the mattress marimba, you can get people pregnant and children happen, and STDs, STIs, infections, and then after that, I think it's they should take a step back.
Yeah, parents need to get with the times and understand that kids are learning stuff. Even if they monitor what their children watch and read and listen to and that sort of thing, even if they do that, they're going to learn stuff from other kids. So, parents kind of need to get with the times over this and talk to their kids about these sorts of things. But they discovered, back to the article, they discovered that while a minority of youth have anal sex, many are talking about it in potentially dangerous and upsetting ways. See, there you go. They got the hook in. Oh, this is scary. Well, notice here they said it's a minority that are talking about it. Well, that tells you right up front that while it's a minority of men she's talking about, or excuse me, in this case, boys, even fewer are probably not going to care whether they get consent or not. But anyway, that's beside the point. Remember, she's a feminist. Demonize men, demonize men. So, anyway, from the study, young people talk to interviewers about an oppressive environment where some men compete with each other to have anal sex with women. Oh my God, men competing with each other. Wow, who would have thought? Even if they expect women to find it painful. Well, if you're going to have anal sex, it's going to be a little bit painful. That's just how it goes.
I'm going to point back to the Black and Decker Pecker Wreckers. Oral sex.
Yeah. Women also report that they were repeatedly asked for anal sex by their male partners. The shock. They're asking for permission to have anal sex, and it's repeated. So that's a problem. See, guys, not asking permission is a problem, and then asking permission is also a problem. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't, because you were born with a penis. Remember, this is a feminist we're talking about here. This is a feminist that wrote this article, and it probably is a couple of bigoted feminists that did this study, but don't know that for sure. Their accounts also raise real possibility of coercion for young women, who are sometimes put in situations where they are penetrated anally without their explicit consent. Again, that's the explicit consent bullshit. You've got to ask, you got to say, may I do this every time, and she has to stop and say yes, a verbal yes. Anything else other than that, any other way of doing it than that, it's rape. While the interviewers mentioned young men wanting to copy what they saw in porn as an explanation for anal sex, the interviewers suggest other factors are more important, the researchers note. These include, in some cases, a lack of concern about young women's consent or the levels of pain they might experience, and competition among young men to have anal sex with women. See, of course, it's all men. Now, remember a while ago when I said they excluded gay men and lesbians? There's a reason for that. Now, there are straight men out there who enjoy being on the receiving end of some sort of anal sexual activity. Okay? Everyone knows this. But did she or the researcher stop to think and stop to ask these young men, hey, has your female partner ever done this to you without your explicit consent? Hell no, of course not. They don't give a shit about what's happening to the men. They just give a shit about finding out what men are doing to women and finding some way to demonize these men for doing that. You're sitting there, you're laid back, some girl's going down on you, giving you a blowjob. The next thing you know, she's got a finger up your ass. And you're going, whoa, wait a minute, hold up, back up just a minute. I'm not into that. She removes her finger, you two go on with the sexual encounter. No big deal. No one thinks anything about that. No guy would go, oh my God, I've been raped, I've been sexually assaulted. They don't, guys don't think like that. It doesn't bother us. But you let some guy try to penetrate a girl with his penis, and she says, no, I'm not into that. Then it stops right then and there. They go back to having vaginal sex, and automatically he's a fucking rapist, according to these people. Danny, what do you think about that?
Well, again, they're kind of fumbling around, exploring what what's going on with their body parts at that age. Raging hormones are going on. They're both sexes are kind of coming into their own. Slut walk probably ain't helping matters here. Yes means maybe no, I don't know. Yes means yes until tomorrow, I guess. I don't know, something along them lines. Yeah, isn't that the saying? Yes means yes until tomorrow?
Yeah, yes means yes until she changes her mind.
Yeah, until tomorrow when she sobers up. Yeah.
Yeah, well, to whenever. It could be a week, it could be a month, it could be a year. Speaking of which, this bigot we're talking about here, this Kutner, she wants to remove the statute of limitations for rape. So in other words, you have sex with this, say you're a teenage boy, 16, 17 years old, You have sex with this teenage girl, 16 or 17 years old. You go on the rest of your life and you become, let's say at age 60, you win the lottery. All of a sudden, here comes this 16-year-old, this girl you knew when you were 16 years old, out of nowhere, throwing a rape accusation at you, wanting money. Well, guess what? If Kutner had her way, she could prosecute you for rape and have you thrown in jail. What? 44 years after it happened? No statute of limitations on rape. That's what this bitch wants. Anyway, that's in another article over on Salon. You can click on her name. It'll take you to all her articles.
No statute of limitations?
Actually, James, if you're listening, brother, she's talking about a woman that is running for the governor of a state you might be interested in.
Oh, go ahead, man.
Yeah, that article over on Salon. There's a woman running for governor of a state, and she wants to remove the statute of limitations for rape in that state. So yeah. Anyway.
Yes means potato.
Yeah, exactly.
Right on third.
It doesn't mean a damn thing when you say yes to a woman, because she can change her mind later. Or excuse me, it doesn't mean a damn thing when she says yes to you, because she can change her mind later, and then it's rape. What was it? Paul Elam said, women should tell men, "Look, I'll call you tomorrow and let you know if what we did tonight was rape or not."
Yeah.
I mean, really. But, okay, gay men, some of them like to have anal sex. She did not ask, according to this, what she's written in this article, and according to what she quoted here, they did not ask gay men, hey, look, has this ever happened to you? Didn't ask them that. Why? Because they didn't fucking care. It's gay men. Who gives a shit if they're raping each other? Feminists don't give a shit about that. Normal people would, but not feminists. And then again, there's lesbians who also enjoy anal sex. Did they ask, these gay women, hey, has this ever happened to you? No, of course not. Why? Because they don't give a shit. Because there's not a man involved, and therefore there's no one to demonize. This study stinks to high heaven because of the way it's worded and what they've said about it right here. They only asked men what they have done and how they, do you care about the woman's pain, or do you care about getting consent? And they asked the women, have you ever, had a guy pressure you into having anal sex? And all this, they asked the women one set of questions and the men the others. They didn't give a shit about the gay men and gay women, and they didn't give a shit about what the women were doing to the men. And that is feminism. You got any comments, Dan?
Well, I'm just kind of looking at the study here, and the number one reason for the main reasons given for young people having anal sex were that they wanted to copy what they saw in pornography. So I'm kind of wondering what are these parents kind of letting their kids view on the internet? I know it's awful hard to kind of watch over your kids. Yeah, they eventually you can't protect them all their lives from everything that's out there, and you want them to be knowledgeable about things. But if this is what they're digging into after school, that's kind of something that possibly you might want to raise an eyebrow about, maybe talk to them about, if that's what's going on. Other than that, again, they admitted asking homosexual men and lesbians. Homosexual men might be, a really good control group to find out, how that, that sex act comes about. And again, they're not really, they don't address a lot of other things, like the scenario you put out there where she slips that little pinky in when, you're least expecting it. And Black and Decker Pecker.
Yeah. Yeah, it's who hasn't seen something in a porn movie and thought, I'd like to try that. Yeah, setting aside the fact that these are teenagers and they shouldn't be exposed to pornography. But as adults,
what? Hold on. Isn't it illegal for under 18 to possess and have pornography in most? Like I think that's pretty much right across Canada, and isn't that the way in the States? Like freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and all, but you know what? There's
it's 21 here, as far as I know. I believe it's 21 in every state.
This is not me, going anti-pornography or anything like that, but geez, we don't allow our kids at 16 to drink. Oops, things might happen. Bad choices might be made when, copious amounts of alcohol are poured down, or when teenagers are pouring copious amounts of alcohol down their throats.
Well, Dan, you've got to be 21 here to drink.
So, it seems to me the study is looking at something that this is like something that that they should be trying to curtail something, and they're ignoring what they should be trying to get rid of. Reckless internet use by teenagers.
Yeah, well, that is a problem, but taking it from the teenage perspective to the adult perspective, that these who hasn't seen something in a porn movie and thought, hey, I'd like to try that, and tried it and thought, that would look better on film than it does in real life. But people experiment and they get ideas, and they get a lot of ideas from porn or reading erotic literature on the internet, whatever. And that in itself is not a bad thing for adults to do. It's not that big of a problem. But you hit on something, Dan. You said you weren't going all anti-porn and everything. These are feminists. They're very much anti-porn. There is no such thing as a sex-positive feminist. That's just bullshit.
Yeah, Kutner could be from the Gail Dines or whatever school of idiocy.
Well, the thing about it is, Dan, is you look at the sex-positive feminists, and they're all about rape culture. They're all about enforcing these boundaries on people's sexuality and their sex lives and what they do in the bedroom, about how they go about gaining consent and all that. There is no such thing as a sex.
Break out the pom-pom, girls. Break out the pom-pom.
By God, bitch, you want to have sex, you better get on your knees and beg for it. And I'm going to film you while you do it.
Lawyers signed in triplicate. Notary public.
Oh, and we're going to have a blood test to make sure you hadn't been drinking.
Jury of 12. Well, screw it. Just have have the jury sitting there ready to convict for rape right after the sex act. Have them right in the bedroom. Just right there. Fuck it. Say it.
Yeah, it's like a game show. They hold up yes or no if it was rape.
God.
Well, okay. No, wait a minute. These are teenagers, though, Dan. What are they? What are we going to do? Have their parents there present to make sure it wasn't rape?
I don't know. You know what? Like I said, I think the kids are learning a little too much too early these days, and I think parents are kind of falling asleep at the wheel, just pawning them off on the internet and video games. And I believe that would be agreed upon by probably Dr. Warren Farrell there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can agree with that. They are. It's like their sexuality is being hotboxed by the rest of society. The society as a whole, especially the media. That things are that they're having ideas put in their head before they're actually ready for them. I do agree with that.
Yeah, and actually, there's a nice little article here from Maclean's, and I'm just going to bring this up and read just one little bit of it. And it's in the middle there. It says, when it comes to the question of what's appropriate to broach with young children, conflicts abound. Last month, Toronto parents were incensed to learn that the Toronto District School Board webpage promoting health education included a link to an organization that suggests kids explore their sexuality by experimenting with sex toys and vegetables. Okay, you know what? If Toronto District School Board, elementary schools and whatnot, have links, pointing kids to this information, then no wonder they're trying to get into it, those sex acts at such a young age.
Oh dear God! Now, what grade level or what age level was this being introduced to these kids?
I believe this was at the elementary level. That it was. It's some crazy stuff going on.
No, okay, Dan. Elementary school in Canada is what grades?
Oh, anywhere up to grade 8. And they go overboard too. It goes further on in the thing in the paragraph there. In March, a UK school banned best friends because or best friends. Okay. And then in May, a 6-year-old boy in Denver was suspended for singing the pop anthem, "I'm Sexy and I Know It," to a female classmate, violating the school's sexual harassment policy. Like, you know what? There's just like craziness abounds in schools these days. Insanity.
Yeah. Oh, God. Okay, wait a minute. Hold on just a second. Where's a fucking elementary school student supposed to get a sex toy?
I don't know. Please, I don't know. I don't want to think about it. I'm glad that they removed the link off the Toronto District School Board's webpage. It's that's kind of crazy. Like we are talking young teenagers here. Like I said, too much information too soon for them. Once they're 18 and they're adults, well then, whatever floats their boat, don't involve children or goat. I don't fucking care.
What are they going to do? I mean, 8th graders having a fun party? Those of you that don't know, a fun party is where a bunch of women get together and this other woman comes in and tries to sell them sex toys. Okay. I mean, my God, what the fuck are these people thinking? But, Dan, we're getting really close to the end of the show, brother. It's about time to wrap it up. All I've got to say is, Jenny Kutner, if you're listening, we're not done with you yet. There's more to you. I've found other articles, and we're gonna get you. We're gonna do another show on you and finish this. We're not done with you yet. But anyway, Dan, why don't you take us on out?
All right, folks. We'll talk to you next week there. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can lead a feminist to logic, but you can't make them think. Take the red pill, and we'll catch you next week. Jack?
Yep, everybody take the red pill, and thanks for listening.
Dan and Jack hope you have enjoyed this episode of Blue Collar Red Pill. The song The Last Ones by the band Jazar is used under Creative Commons license and has been modified for this show. Please visit antimisandry.com and avoiceformen.com for more information on the men's human rights movement.